War does not end when the guns go silent. It lingers, in the breath of old men who once carried rifles, in the eyes that still remember the screams of the battlefield. Even decades later, the echoes of war whisper through their dreams, fade to black and white footage, soldiers marching, cities burning, skies filled with bombers. The year is 1945. The world stands between destruction and rebirth. A planet scarred by fire, grief, and unspoken guilt. Armies crumble. Nations break. But the human spirit, it still fights to survive. 3 soldiers, from 3 different lands, walk through the final, fading months of the Second World War. United Kingdom Arthur Bennett, the British infantryman. From the bombed streets of Liverpool to the shattered villages of Europe, Arthur Bennett, a weathered British soldier, marches with weary eyes. He's fought since Normandy, carrying the same rifle through rain, mud, and blood. His trusted Lee Enfield No. 4 MKI. Its metal is scratched, the wood darkened with the oil of his hands. To him, it's more than a weapon, it's a survivor, like he is. Arthur has lost friends, his brother, and nearly his faith. But he fights on, not for glory, not even for victory, but for the small hope that someday, peace will mean something again. Germany. Karl Weiss, the German sniper. In the ruins of Dresden, once a city of art and music, Karl Weiss lies in the rubble of a church tower. His carabiner 98K balanced on the cracked stone windowsill. He is young, barely 24, but his eyes look 50. He fights not for Hitler's Reich, but for survival. The world calls him the enemy, but all he wants is to see the next sunrise. As the Allies advance and his homeland burns, Karl begins to understand that war no longer has sides, only victims. Japan. Hiroshi Tanaka, the fallen pilot. Half a world away, on a scorched Pacific island, Hiroshi Tanaka, a Japanese pilot, sits beside the wreckage of his Zero fighter. Once proud, once fearless, now grounded and broken. His uniform is torn, his face shadowed by defeat. In his hands he holds an Arisaka Type 99 rifle, a symbol of loyalty to an emperor he still respects, but no longer fully believes in. He remembers the friends who flew beside him, their planes swallowed by fire in the endless blue sky. He whispers into the wind, "If death brings honor, why does it feel so hollow?" Military Medal. 3 men, 1 fate. Arthur, Karl, Hiroshi. 3 men separated by oceans, by flags, by orders, but bound by the same pain, the same fear, the same question. What remains of a soldier when the war inside him never ends? Each carries an old rifle. Arthur's Lee Enfield, worn but loyal. Karl's Kar 98K, silent and precise. Hiroshi's Arisaka, cold yet sacred. These rifles once defined them. But soon, their humanity will redefine everything. They have lost brothers. They have lost homes. They have lost hope. But destiny will cross their paths. Not in battle, but in forgiveness. The British camp near the Rhine smells of oil, mud, and cold fear. The war may be ending, but the front still trembles with the ghosts of yesterday's battle. Inside a torn canvas tent, Arthur Bennett sits cross-legged, his Lee Enfield No. 4 MKI laid across his lap. He runs a cloth along the barrel in slow, careful strokes. A ritual, almost prayer-like, for soldiers who know that life depends on mettle and discipline. Outside, the world groans. Engines cough. Shells echo in the hills. Somewhere, a man screams for a medic. Somewhere else, someone sings a broken tune to forget the fear. Arthur doesn't look up. He's lost count of how many times he's cleaned that rifle. But it gives his hands purpose, when his heart feels empty. The promise. As he wipes the bolt clean, a memory flickers. A younger voice, soft and familiar, calling his name through the mist of Dunkirk. "If I live through this," Tom had said, grinning beneath a boy's helmet that was far too big for him, "I'll never hate anyone again. Not even the ones who shoot at us." Arthur had laughed then. "You're too soft, Tommy. Hate keeps you alive out here." But Tom only smiled. No, brother. Hate's the last bullet that kills you. The memory fades into the crack of distant gunfire. Arthur blinks. The tent around him returns. Tom never came home from Dunkirk. Arthur was told his body was lost at sea. Since then, forgiveness had become just another casualty of war. The impossible forgiveness. He has seen too much to believe in mercy now. The fields of Caen, soaked in blood. The burning villages of France, where children cried for mothers who would never answer. The hollow eyes of prisoners lined against walls. Arthur's heart hardened with every sight. He told himself he was fighting for peace. But some nights, it felt like peace had died before the first bullet was fired. And yet, inside his left breast pocket lies a folded letter, its paper thin, its edges yellowed with age. The letter. He takes it out slowly, like touching something sacred. The handwriting is neat, the ink slightly smudged. It's written in careful English, from someone named Anna Keller, a German nurse who once treated him when he was wounded outside Arnhem. "You were my enemy when you fell at my door," she wrote. "But when I saw your blood, I could only see a man who was someone's son." Arthur had been delirious then, bleeding, half-conscious. He'd never forgotten her face, tired, pale, streaked with soot. But with eyes that refused to let hate in. He rereads her final line every night before sleep. "If kindness can survive war, maybe the world can too." He folds the letter carefully, presses it to his chest, and whispers to the darkness, "You were right, Anna." Tom would have said the same. The shadow before dawn. Outside, the first rays of morning struggle through the fog. The Rhine glitters faintly in the distance, like a silver scar across the land. Arthur slings his rifle over his shoulder and steps out of the tent. Around him, soldiers prepare for another push. Men too young to remember why they came here. Men too old to believe the war will ever truly end. Arthur looks at them, then at the sky, and mutters softly, almost to himself, "If I make it home, I'll keep that promise, Tom. I'll forgive whoever's left." A shell lands miles away, shaking the earth. Arthur doesn't flinch. He walks forward, steady, into the haze, carrying a letter in his heart and a promise in his soul. Music swells, slow strings, then fade to the distant sound of marching boots. The city of Dresden, once called the jewel of Saxony, now lies in ruins. What was once music, laughter, and art has turned to stone and dust. And among the broken spires and burned-out streets, a single man hides behind the shattered bones of a church. Karl Weiss, a sniper of the German army, presses his back against the cold wall, his breath trembling in the smoke. His uniform is torn, his hands blackened with soot. He hasn't eaten in 2 days. The only warmth he knows comes from the faint heat of a dying candle, flickering beside a cracked statue of Christ. The last soldier in a dead city. The camera moves slowly through the ruined church, pews splintered, glass shattered, moonlight streaming through holes in the roof. Karl crouches near a window, his carabiner 98K resting steady on the sill. Its wooden stock smooth from years of use, its scope fogged from tears and dust. He scans the horizon, but there's no enemy left to shoot. Only smoke. Only ghosts. The orders from command are gone. The officers are gone. Even the faith that once fueled him is gone. What remains is hunger and guilt. He whispers to himself, "This isn't my war anymore." The weight of ashes. Before the bombing, Dresden was home. His mother baked bread in the morning. His little sister Lotte chased pigeons outside the church square. Now, the same square is buried under rubble. Karl had gone to search for them after the firestorms. Digging through debris with his bare hands, he found only fragments. A piece of his sister's dress, his mother's wedding ring, and the photo he now keeps inside his coat, the only thing that survived the flames. He takes the photo out, a faded black and white picture of 3 smiling faces. He stares at it, his fingers shaking. "Ich bin allein," he murmurs. "I am alone." The silence of conscience. When Karl joined the army, He believed he was protecting Germany. His home, his family, his people. But somewhere between Stalingrad and Berlin, he realized he wasn't fighting for protection anymore. He was fighting for men who had already lost their souls. He saw things he could never unsee. A soldier who laughed while torching a barn. Civilians shot for stealing bread. Orders that felt more like curses. And so, when the Allies pushed toward the heart of Germany, Karl made a quiet decision. He would not fire another bullet. He looks through his scope, watching Allied soldiers move carefully through the smoke, tired men, not monsters. He lowers his rifle. No more killing, he whispers. I am done killing ghosts. The last bullet. He takes out the single remaining round from his pouch. The last bullet he has. Its brass casing gleams faintly in the dim light. A perfect little machine of death. Cold and patient, Karl kneels beside the cracked stone altar and digs into the ash with his hands. The ground is soft, a mixture of soot, dirt, and the remains of what once was sacred. He places the bullet gently beside the photograph of his family, and with a trembling voice says, For you, Mother. For you, Lotte. No more killing. He buries them together, bullet and memory, and presses his hand over the dirt as if sealing a grave. For the first time in years, his heart feels both heavy and free. A beam of sunlight pierces through the church roof, falling across his face, the only light left in a city built of shadows. The quiet rebellion. As the day fades, Karl removes the insignia from his sleeve. The black eagle, the swastika, all of it, and tosses it into the fire. The flames consume it slowly, curling the edges, turning the symbol to dust. He watches it burn without pride, without hatred, only relief. Let them find me, he says quietly. But I will not raise this rifle again. He shoulders his weapon one last time. Not as a tool of war, but as a reminder of the man he refuses to become. He steps out of the church, the ruins of Dresden stretching before him like an ocean of ash. The wind carries the sound of bells, faint, cracked, but still ringing. And for a moment, Karl Weiss dares to believe that maybe forgiveness isn't just for others. Maybe it's for himself, too. Music rises, low piano, echoing brass. Fade to black with the words on screen. No more killing. No more ghosts. Thousands of miles away from Europe's ruins, another war burns on. A war fought not in cities, but in the skies and seas of the Pacific. And on one small island, scarred by bombs and silence, a lone man kneels beside the broken wings of his past. Hiroshi Tanaka, pilot of the Imperial Japanese Navy, once soared among the clouds in a proud Mitsubishi A6M0. Fast, graceful, deadly. Now, that same plane lies shattered before him. Its metal twisted, its paint scorched, its emblem fading under ash and rain. The fallen wing. The camera pans slowly across the wreckage, the cherry blossom insignia half burnt, the sand littered with bullet casings. Hiroshi's hands are bloodied from pulling himself out of the cockpit. His flight suit is torn, the rising sun patch hanging by a thread. Beside him, his katana rests untouched, the blade polished. A symbol of the Bushido code he once swore to uphold. He gazes at his reflection in the steel. A soldier, yes, but also a man drowning in questions. His instructor's final words echo in his mind. Die for the Emperor, and you will live forever. For years he believed that. He believed that to die in the sky, to fall in flames, was the highest honor a man could achieve. But now, surrounded by fire and ruin, that promise feels empty. Just another ghost in the smoke. The island of fire. The village below burns. Homes crumble beneath explosions. The cries of the wounded rise through the palm trees. Hiroshi stumbles through the wreckage, past the bodies of soldiers and civilians alike. He was told this island was a military target. But now he sees the truth. It is full of families. An old woman clutches her grandchild under a collapsed roof. A boy hides behind a cart, eyes wide, holding a toy plane made from bamboo. And in that moment, Hiroshi sees himself. The boy who once dreamed of flying. Not for war, but for the beauty of the sky. He kneels beside the boy, removes his pilot gloves, and gives the child his own flight badge, a small golden wing. The boy takes it, trembling. The enemy's mercy. The gunfire fades, replaced by the hum of an unfamiliar voice. Hiroshi looks toward the beach. There, among the fallen, an American medic kneels beside a wounded Japanese child. The man's uniform bears the foreign flag Hiroshi was raised to hate. But what he does next stops Hiroshi's breath. The medic tears his own bandage roll in half and wraps it around the child's leg. He doesn't speak the language, but his actions speak louder than any anthem. Hiroshi watches, frozen, his hand resting on his katana, trembling. He was taught that mercy is weakness, that compassion for the enemy is betrayal. Yet here, in the middle of hell, the so-called enemy is saving one of his own. The moment of truth. Hiroshi grips the handle of his sword. His mind screams with the voices of the past. His commander's orders, his instructor's pride. The emperor's decree. Die with honor. Never surrender. Show no mercy. But beneath all of that noise, he hears something else. His own voice, quiet and fragile, like a whisper beneath the storm. If honor means killing what is human, then I will live without honor. He lowers his katana, letting it fall gently to the ground. The blade sinks halfway into the sand, gleaming in the firelight. The choice to live. Hiroshi stands, his eyes wet with ash and tears. He walks toward the medic, hands open, unarmed. The American turns, startled, reaching for his pistol. But Hiroshi only bows. No words. Just a gesture, ancient, powerful, peaceful. The medic hesitates, then lowers his weapon. Two men, enemies by order, brothers by heart, share a moment of understanding that no war could destroy. Camera pulls back, the two men kneeling beside the child, surrounded by smoke and silence. The sea crashes behind them, washing over the footprints of soldiers. The rebirth of a soul. That night, Hiroshi buries his sword beside his wrecked fighter plane. Not as an act of surrender, but of rebirth. He marks the grave with a single word, carved into driftwood. Ningen, human. Then he looks up at the stars. The same stars he once flew beneath. The same stars his enemies prayed under. He whispers into the night, I will not die for the Emperor. I will live for the world that must come after him. Soft Japanese flute fades in. The fire dies down. Dawn begins to break. Months have passed since the guns went quiet. The world breathes again, slow, uncertain, scarred. In the ashes of what was once an empire, men rebuild with trembling hands. And among them walks a British soldier who has forgotten what it feels like to trust. Arthur Bennett marches through the ruined streets of Bremen, assigned to a British relief team tasked with restoring a captured German hospital. It's no longer a place of battle, now, it's a sanctuary for whoever's left alive. The air smells of disinfectant and smoke. The corridors echo with coughs, whispers, and the soft cry of a child who doesn't understand why her father isn't coming back. The ghosts of duty. Arthur moves through the wards, his boots leaving prints on the dusty tile floors. Every face he sees reminds him of someone he lost. German women tending to their wounded sons. British medics patching up civilians. Priests offering prayers in broken English and fractured faith. He's supposed to supervise, to keep order. But something inside him feels heavy, hollow. As if the war has left a trench in his soul that no shovel can fill. He pauses by a window. Snow drifts through a shattered pane. In the reflection, he almost sees his brother Tom standing behind him, smiling. He blinks, and the image is gone. A face from the enemy. In the far corner of the hospital courtyard, Arthur spots a man bending over a wounded child. A man in tattered German uniform trousers, his sleeves rolled up, his hands stained with blood and ash. He moves with care, whispering softly to the boy in German. Arthur watches for a moment. Something about the man's calm defiance feels familiar. When the man turns, the recognition hits like a bullet. Karl Weiss. The German sniper from Dresden. The enemy whose kind Arthur once swore to hate forever. Karl looks older now, thinner, eyes hollow but gentle. He's not holding a rifle anymore, only a bandage and a prayer. Arthur freezes. His hand instinctively drifts toward the revolver at his side. The air between them tightens, thick with ghosts. The room goes silent. Even the nurses stop moving. The wind outside howls through the broken glass. The moment of choice. Karl sees the motion, the soldier's hand on his gun, and straightens slowly, palms open, trembling slightly. He meets Arthur's eyes, not with fear, but with quiet surrender. In broken English, his voice soft but steady, he says, "No fight. No more bullets." The words hang in the air, fragile as glass. Arthur stares at him, this man who should be an enemy. This man who once might have taken his life without hesitation. But in Karl's eyes, Arthur sees no hatred. Only exhaustion. Only a man trying to heal what he once helped destroy. Arthur exhales, a long, shaking breath. He lowers his hand from his weapon. The sound of metal sliding against leather breaks the tension like thunder. The handshake. Arthur steps forward. Karl flinches, just slightly, then steadies himself. The two men stand inches apart, close enough to see the dirt under each other's fingernails. Close enough to feel the weight of every dead comrade standing between them. For a moment, the war seems to hold its breath. Then Arthur extends his hand. His fingers tremble, not from fear, but from something deeper. Hope. Karl hesitates, eyes darting to the hand, unsure if it's a trick. Unsure if peace is something he deserves. Then, slowly, he reaches out and takes it. Their hands clasp, British and German, strong, rough, human. The camera circles them slowly as the sound of distant church bells swells, echoing across the courtyard. Narrator. In that handshake, history bends. Two soldiers who once aimed to destroy each other now stand as proof that forgiveness can rise even from ruin. The beginning of humanity again. A nurse passes by, pausing at the sight. She whispers to a child beside her, "Look, the war is ending." And maybe she's right. Because wars don't truly end with treaties or surrender. They end in moments like this. When one man chooses not to hate another. Arthur releases Karl's hand, nodding once. Karl returns the gesture, his eyes glistening. May the man speaks again. They don't need to. The silence between them says everything. The snow falls heavier now, covering the courtyard, the hospital, the graves, and the rifles stacked in the corner. A new kind of peace settles, fragile, uncertain but real. Narrator softly. The guns had fallen silent. But in the hearts of two men, forgiveness had just begun to speak. Music swells, slow strings and faint choir. Fade to black. The sun rises over a wounded nation. Japan, the land once called invincible, now kneels beneath its own sorrow. The Emperor has spoken. The war is over. But for the soldiers who lived through it, peace is not a celebration. It is a question, one they must learn to answer with empty hands. The return home. Hiroshi Tanaka steps off a rusted transport truck, his boots sinking into the mud of what was once his hometown near Hiroshima Bay. The streets he remembers, gone. The cherry trees, blackened stumps. The laughter of his childhood, replaced by silence and smoke. He walks past the shells of houses. Past the broken bicycles. Past the ghosts that still seem to breathe in the air. His home is nothing but rubble now. His parents' names are scratched into a wooden beam, the only thing left standing. He kneels, pressing his forehead against the splintered wood. For the first time, he allows the tears to come. A soft gust of wind carries ash through the ruins like falling snow. A different kind of duty. Weeks later, Hiroshi joins a team of locals assisting Allied forces with clearing debris and rebuilding coastal villages. He no longer wears a uniform. His katana lies buried in the earth. A silent grave marker for the man he once was. Now his tools are ropes, shovels, and bare hands. He lifts stone and timber beside American and British sailors, men he was once trained to kill. At first, they work in silence, suspicion still thick between them. But war's exhaustion softens even the hardest hearts. One of the British engineers offers Hiroshi water. He nods in thanks, a quiet bridge formed without words. The letter from the sea. One morning, as the tide recedes, Hiroshi walks along the blackened shore. Bits of debris glimmer in the sunlight, metal scraps, splintered crates, torn fabric from military uniforms. He bends down to pick up a piece of driftwood, and finds something else tangled in the seaweed. A torn piece of paper, water-stained but still legible, sealed inside a cracked wax envelope. It bears a faded British insignia. Royal Mail, Field Post. Curious, Hiroshi carefully unfolds it. The ink has bled, but the words are still there, steady and honest. If anyone finds this, know that I forgave the man who could have been my killer. We are all soldiers in different uniforms, not enemies, just lost brothers. Arthur Bennett, 1945. Hiroshi stares at the letter, the sea breeze lifting its edges like fragile wings. He reads it once. Then again. And again. Each word seems to echo inside him. A language beyond nationality, beyond war. Forgiveness. Humanity. Brotherhood. The awakening. For so long, Hiroshi believed honor was written in blood. That dying for the emperor would make him eternal. But standing there, with this foreign letter in his hands, written by a man who might have killed him, he feels something he hasn't felt since before the war began. Peace. He looks to the horizon, where the ocean meets the sky. A new dawn is breaking. He folds the letter carefully, placing it close to his heart. Camera slowly pans upward. The rising sun paints the sea gold, waves washing over the scars of the past. Narrator softly. Across oceans and ashes, the words of one soldier reached another who had never heard his name. And in that moment, the war finally ended. Not in victory or defeat, but in understanding. Fade to black. The sound of gentle waves continues. Then a single line appears on screen. Forgiveness travels farther than any bullet ever could. 15 years have passed since the war ended. The world has changed, rebuilt, reborn. But the memories of the men who fought still linger in the quiet corners of their hearts. In a small village near Normandy, veterans and families gather for a peace commemoration. There are no banners of victory here, no medals or marching bands. Only silence and gratitude. The British soldier returns. Arthur Bennett stands near the memorial, his cane sinking slightly into the wet earth. The once strong soldier from Liverpool is older now, his hair gray, his face lined with time and loss. But his eyes still hold the same calm fire, the kind that only men who've seen too much can carry with grace. He places his old Lee-Enfield rifle bolt, the one piece he kept, beside a wreath of poppies. For him, it's not an offering of war, but of memory. A symbol of what he survived, and what he chose to forgive. The wind picks up gently, carrying the faint echo of laughter from children playing nearby, the sound of a peace he once could only imagine. The Germans' arrival. Across the churchyard, a quiet figure walks along the gravel path. Karl Weiss, the former sniper of Dresden, now wears a worn brown coat and carries a single red rose. He stops before the memorial, eyes tracing the names of fallen soldiers, British, German, American alike. There are no enemies carved in stone here. Only men. When Karl sees Arthur, he hesitates, just for a moment, then begins to walk toward him. Arthur looks up, surprised but not afraid. Their eyes meet again after 15 long years. No rifles. No rubble. Just recognition. They exchange a nod, one that says everything words cannot. Karl lays the rose at the base of the monument. The camera lingers on the trembling petals against cold marble. The man from the east. Then, from across the crowd, another figure steps forward. A man in a simple gray suit, carrying a small folded letter. The edges yellowed, the ink nearly faded. Hiroshi Tanaka. He has traveled across oceans. Not as a soldier, but as a man in search of closure. He spots Arthur first, standing by the memorial with Karl beside him. For a long moment he simply watches them. The two men whose lives had unknowingly shaped his own. The crowd parts as Hiroshi approaches. The three men stand face to face. Three former enemies, now bound by something stronger than war itself. The words that end war. None of them speak at first. The silence between them feels sacred. A silence built not of fear, but of understanding. Then Hiroshi bows deeply, his hands trembling as he holds out the old, weathered letter. His voice, quiet but steady, breaks the still air. Your words crossed oceans. They saved me. Arthur looks at him, eyes glistening. He remembers the letter, the words he had written for his brother who never came home. He smiles gently, shaking his head. No, mate, he says softly. You saved yourself? You chose to live. The wind stirs, carrying the faint sound of the sea, as if the world itself is listening. Karl, standing beside them, takes a deep breath. His voice is older now, rough and unsteady, but filled with peace. We all did. And maybe that's how wars truly end. The three men exchange quiet smiles. No more uniforms, no more ranks. Just men, survivors, brothers. The bells of peace. As the church bells begin to ring, the crowd bows their heads. Children place flowers at the memorial's base, their laughter mingling with the sound of the bells. Arthur, Karl, and Hiroshi stand side by side. Not as enemies. Not even as soldiers. But as men who chose forgiveness over fire. The camera slowly pulls back, the three figures silhouetted against the morning sun, the bells echoing across the countryside. Narrator softly. Time can rebuild cities. But only forgiveness can rebuild hearts. Music swells. Fade to black. Final text appears on screen. For those who fought, for those who forgave. Peace was their final victory. In the end, no nation wins a war. Only people who find the courage to forgive survive it. The screen fades between the faces of Arthur, Karl, and Hiroshi, older now, their eyes calm, their expressions peaceful. The years have softened the scars, but not erased them. They stand together one last time outside the memorial. The light of dusk washing over them. No uniforms, no medals, just three men who once carried the world's anger. And now carry only peace. Slow dissolve, the scene transitions to a quiet museum hall decades later. The Museum of Memory. Glass cases line the room, each holding relics from a time the world swore it would never repeat. Children walk beside their parents, whispering as they look at the faded flags and rusted helmets. In the center, under soft white light, three rifles rest side by side. Arthur's Lee Enfield No. 4 MKI, worn, but lovingly preserved. Karl's Carabiner 98K, its scope removed, its steel dull with time. Hiroshi's Arisaka Type 99, the Emperor's crest still faintly visible on the barrel. Beneath them, a simple plaque reads, Weapons of war carried by men who found peace. The camera lingers on the rifles. The faint reflection of the three old men appears in the glass, smiling, fading slowly like ghosts set free. The final words. Narrator softly, voice filled with warmth. History remembers battles. But humanity remembers those who chose not to fight. A gentle sound, the clink of metal, like rifles being laid down, echoes through the hall, resonating like a prayer. Narrator, after a pause. Their war ended long ago. But their peace still teaches us how to live. Music swells, slow piano, joined by violins. The camera pans upward toward a skylight where sunlight streams in, illuminating the rifles. Then, fade to black. On-screen text. Dedicated to every soldier who chose forgiveness over hate. Soft wind and distant waves close the scene. Fade out completely.